Here's one classic example of why you shouldn't be taking anyone's word for what a particular document or a particular piece of evidence says. In other words, if somebody comes to you and says, look, I have a document that says X, you don't know if that document says X until you yourself take a look at it and independently confirm that. Because so often, people who show you X, they hold Y in their hand. Why? Sometimes because they lie, but also very often because they see something different from what you would see, because many of us, maybe most of us, have our own version of reality and our own version of truth. And we tend to interpret the things we see in our favor very often. So let's go back to this example. This is a letter from a minister to an employee supporting a request for a religious exemption from the requirement to be vaccinated against COVID-19. After the employer terminated that employee, after they denied this request, the employer and their attorneys are claiming that the reason that they could not provide this accommodation is because the letter asked that the employee be exempt from all vaccines, not just from COVID-19 vaccines. So the employer says that because the letter says we believe that the quote unquote vaccines being deployed, including but not limited to the COVID-19 vaccines, are in direct contradiction to the will and commandments of the God we serve. So they say because it says including but not limited, this means that it covers all the vaccines. Well, this is not a fair and reasonable interpretation of this letter. First of all, anyone can see that because the minister put vaccines in quotation marks, the minister must be skeptical of these particular vaccines. Secondly, it says being deployed, so it's only reasonable to talk about the most current vaccines. Most importantly, if this minister really wanted to say all vaccines, he would make this letter much more simple. Hey, any type of vaccination is against Islam, against this religion. I instruct that this person to not be vaccinated, period, by any vaccine. This letter says nothing of that sort. And therefore, the interpretation that the employer and their attorneys are trying to give to this letter is so way off. It's so overbroad. It's so unreasonable. But hey, if I didn't read that letter myself, and if I took the employer's words for what they believe or they say this letter says, I would think, yeah, the letter says no vaccines of any kind. But that's not what this letter says. This is just one of many examples and a reminder to both parties in cases and their lawyers not to take anything at face value, but check and verify, read yourself, and ask yourself what makes sense to you.